I want to begin with something small, something easy to overlook. A cylinder seal resting in a museum in Berlin. Its catalog number is VA243, black stone, about the size of a palm. The kind of object a Sumerian official would have worn on a cord, around his neck, pressing it into wet clay to leave his authority behind in physical form. When you roll it across a flat surface, it leaves an impression, not just a mark, but a scene. Figures, symbols, a visual language belonging to a civilization that vanished 4,000 years ago. At the center of that impression, there is a star. Surrounding it, arranged in a way that doesn't immediately read as decorative or ritualistic, are 11 smaller bodies. They aren't identical, they differ in size. Some seem to have even smaller bodies near them, and the whole configuration holds together spatially. It feels structured, a dominant center, orbiting forms, a system. This object is roughly 4,500 years old. I spent a long time staring at it before I allowed myself to ask the obvious question. But the obvious question isn't whether the Sumerians had telescopes. They didn't. The real question is more precise and far more interesting. What did the people who made this object actually understand about the structure of the sky above them? And where did that understanding come from? Because once you start pulling on that thread, the answer the Sumerians themselves give is not vague. It's not symbolic, it's consistent, specific, and almost completely ignored. They say they were taught. The Sumerians are a civilization that, in many ways, shouldn't exist in the form they do. They appear in the historical record already complete. Already equipped with writing, with mathematics, with a fully structured calendar, with astronomical knowledge so refined that parts of it are still embedded in how we measure reality today. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. That system, the base 60 numerical framework, was developed nearly 5,000 years ago. And it's so deeply woven into modern life that most people use it constantly without ever questioning where it came from. That's not coincidence, that's inheritance. We received it from the Babylonians. They received it from the Sumerians. And the Sumerians, according to their own records, received it from someone else. The Mul-Apen tablets are among the most comprehensive astronomical documents that survived from the ancient world. Written in cuneiform, they catalog stars and constellations, track the rising and setting of celestial bodies across the year, map planetary movements, and record precise mathematical relationships between lunar and solar cycles. Modern astronomers have checked these records. They hold up. The Venus tablet of Amisaduqa documents the appearances of Venus over a 21-year span. Its accuracy is so high that historians still use it today to anchor the chronology of the ancient Near East. These are not casual observations, not guesses made by people staring at the sky and speculating. This is systematic work, long-term, institutionally supported, mathematically rigorous, a sustained program of observation that produced data precise enough to remain useful 4,000 years later. And yet the standard academic explanation treats this as settled, that such knowledge emerged gradually, slowly, built piece by piece through centuries of naked-eye observation. But that conclusion isn't as solid as it presents itself, because the Sumerians themselves never describe their knowledge that way. They don't say they developed it, they say they received it. The Apkallu, 7 beings, were sent by the god Enki from his domain in the subterranean freshwater realm at Eridu. They emerged from the sea before the Great Flood and lived among humans. The Babylonian priest Berossus, writing in the 3rd century BCE for a Greek audience and drawing from temple archives that no longer exist, describes the first of these beings in unsettling detail, a creature named Oannes, the body of a fish, but beneath it, the head, feet, and voice of a man. It came from the Persian Gulf during the day. It taught writing, it taught mathematics, it taught the sciences. At night, it returned to the sea, and while among humans, it consumed no food. What Berossus presents is not framed as myth in the soft, symbolic sense. He presents it as history, as explanation, an account of how a civilization could appear so suddenly, with writing, mathematics, and a fully formed cosmological framework, far earlier than expected under any gradual development model. The Apkallu gave it to them. And among the things they gave, according to the texts, was knowledge of the heavens. Now I want to go somewhere most discussions of Sumerian astronomy avoid, because this is where the real question begins to take shape. The Enuma Elish, a Babylonian creation text built on older Sumerian cosmological traditions, describes a time before the current structure of the heavens existed. A primordial state, a time when massive bodies moved differently, when interactions between them produced the world as it is now. It's usually interpreted as theology, as myth, as symbolic storytelling. But if you actually read it closely, it describes motion. Bodies interacting, collisions, new structures forming from older ones. The arrangement we see today emerging from something that came before. Zecharia Sitchin interpreted this as a record of a planetary collision, a rogue celestial body entering the early solar system and reshaping it. That interpretation gets attention in alternative circles, and rejection in mainstream scholarship, often based more on the person proposing it than the proposal itself. I'm not here to defend Sitchin's conclusions. That's not the point. The point is simpler. The language of the Enuma Elish, if taken as descriptive rather than purely symbolic, reads like an account of physical events involving massive bodies in space. So the real question becomes, could this be a memory of something? Real? An ancient astronomical event? Encoded in myth because myth was the only available medium? That question hasn't been seriously explored. It's been categorized, filed, closed, labeled as myth, and moved past. But what if the myth is a record? Now back to that cylinder seal in Berlin. The academic interpretation of VA243 is straightforward. The central figure is a deity. The surrounding forms are stars. The composition is symbolic, not astronomical. The size variations are artistic, not meaningful. And to be fair, that interpretation is defensible. Ancient Near Eastern art frequently depicts divine figures among stars. Stellar imagery is everywhere in Sumerian and Babylonian culture. But that explanation doesn't fully resolve the details. The central object is larger in a way that aligns more closely with a sun and planet structure than a god surrounded by stars motif. The surrounding bodies vary in size in a way that breaks from typical decorative symmetry. Some appear to have smaller companions, satellites if you choose to read it that way, or simply artistic variation, if you don't. But context matters. This is the same civilization that tracked Venus across 21 years with extraordinary precision. The same civilization that divided circles into 360 degrees and time into units of 60, systems designed for measuring rotation and angular relationships. The same civilization whose astronomical records consistently align with modern calculations. So when that civilization presses an image into clay that resembles a central body surrounded by orbiting objects, the assumption that they could not have intended that meaning deserves closer examination than it usually receives. And then we return to the deeper question. The Sumerians themselves repeatedly emphasized that their knowledge, astronomical, mathematical, structural, was not self-developed. It was transmitted. The Apkallu brought it. Enki gave it. Beings emerged from the sea, taught humanity, and then disappeared. The standard academic response is predictable. Ancient cultures attribute knowledge to divine sources. It's how pre-scientific societies explain accumulated wisdom. The Apkallu are treated as mythological constructs, narrative devices, not historical accounts. That explanation is internally consistent, but it's also universal. Every claim of external knowledge transmission gets classified as mythology, automatically. The classification happens before investigation, and so the question never actually gets asked. What if the Sumerians were right? Not literally, not fish-bodied beings walking out of the ocean, but structurally. What if their astronomical knowledge was inherited rather than independently created? What would that look like in the evidence, and is that pattern present? The earliest records we have of Sumerian astronomy are already advanced. Not primitive, not in early stages of development, advanced from the beginning, but a gradual development model predicts something else. A rough start, followed by refinement over time. That's not what we see. What we see is a system that appears already refined at its earliest recorded point, which suggests the refinement happened before the record begins. If knowledge were inherited, that's exactly what the evidence would look like. An advanced starting point, a lack of early trial and error phases, and a consistent internal claim that the knowledge came from outside. The Sumerians said they were taught by beings from the sea. They preserved that claim in religious texts, king lists, and creation narratives. Berossus recorded it thousands of years later, presenting it as history, not metaphor. The cylinder seal in Berlin still exists. The Mol-Epen tablets have been translated. The Venus records are accessible. The base 60 system governs how we measure time every single day. They left behind everything, except a clear answer to the question they themselves keep raising. Where? Did they learn to read the sky like that? And who came out of the sea to teach them? I keep coming back to that seal.